Good morning, guys. It's Janet again from Reluctant Boater. The project that we're going to be taking on today is using some Barnacle Buster on the insides of the engine. I understand, from a layman's point of view, it's kind of like putting Drano in there. It cleans out all the crud out of your manifolds, and it may give us another couple of years out of the manifolds before we have to do them. We have a 2006, and we've not ever had to do them. We think they're in good shape, but this is just a precaution. So we have our supplies together. We purchased the Barnacle Buster, which you'll see later in this video. We purchased a special cap. You close your seacock, you take the sea strainer cap off, and you put this cap on in its place. It's got an attachment for a garden hose. Then we've got about a 6-foot section of garden hose that we're going to run from the Homer bucket where we mix the juice up into the sea strainer, start up the engines, let that all fill into the engine, shut the engines off, and we're going to let it bake or baste, if you will, for about 8 hours. So I will show you the process of how we did it, and then 8 hours from now I will show you the end result of what comes out down here when we flush it out. So before we begin this process, I want to mention a couple of things that we did that you probably ought to look at doing as well. The first thing we did was we started the engines like normal, let them run for a few minutes, 5 minutes or so, just to let them warm up and make sure that the system is primed. That way we don't have to worry about any vapor locks or anything. After we did that, we turned the engines off, closed the seacocks, and then we opened up the cap on the top of the sea strainers, removed the sea strainers, installed the new cap that has the hose fitting, and attached the hose to that new cap. Then we put the other end of that hose into the bucket that had the pre-mixed Barnacle Blaster in it. We started up the engines at that point, and we ran the engines until the bucket was empty. It took about a minute or so, and then when that was done, we immediately turned the engines off. We've now let it sit for about 5 or 6 hours. Some people like to let it sit for 4 hours. Some people like to let it sit overnight. We just chose 6 hours as a random number. We thought that worked. So we will videotape now the result. You'll see what comes out of the engine outflow valves here, and we'll take a look. So this is the product that we're using to flush the engines out with. It's called Barnacle Buster. It comes in big 1-gallon jugs, and the ratio to mix this is 1 gallon of Barnacle Buster to 4 gallons of water. And you can see we've got a Homer bucket right here, 5-gallon Homer bucket. We're going to be mixing it up and putting it into. So we found this flush cap online. Be sure to measure the size of your sea strainer cap, because these come in different sizes. We bought this one. We have the Mercury 8.1s, and you can zoom in and see the part number on there if you want. It's part number 1285-B. And you basically unscrew the top of the sea strainer, screw this back in, and you see this hose fitting right here. You screw the hose into that fitting. You'll see that in just a few minutes. Here we've got the fluid coming out of the bucket, and you can see it's going into the cap that we have down there by the sea strainer.